Choosing an off-road air system can be extremely confusing, especially if you're just starting out with overlanding or off-roading in general. In today's video, I'm going to answer some important questions and give you enough information so you can make the choice on which system is going to work best for your needs. But first off, let's answer why we need to air up, or let's say air down, because, well, we only need to air up because we've aired down. So the reason we need to air down is because we want a more comfortable ride, we want a better footprint with our tire, and it really gives us more traction and more ability to get off-road without getting stuck. These systems would really be good for anybody getting into overlanding or anybody who's been into overlanding that's wanting to progress and wanting to be able to air down or air back up easily. So the two systems that we're talking about today are a CO2 cylinder system versus a onboard air compressor. And yes, you could buy the plug-in type compressor. I personally feel that the plug-in air supply system doesn't give enough amperage or enough power to actually fill tires effectively, and in the long run you'll end up upgrading anyway, so you might as well cry once and buy once. Over the last 10 months, we've been using the CO2 system, and we went ahead and built something that's more of a DIY PowerTank. PowerTank is a brand that's really coined the CO2 market for having accessories to buy that are kind of all-inclusive and really high quality. But the price difference is so enormous, I couldn't justify spending nearly $800 on a PowerTank system versus building my own for about $325. And the second reason the PowerTank wasn't really an option, or the kit wasn't an option, is because our local Airgas, which is the only place around where I live that actually fills up CO2 tanks, wouldn't fill up a purchased online tank. They would only fill tanks that they had inspected and certified on their own. And so it was just more beneficial to buy their system instead of trying to turn ours in and then waiting 2 to 4 weeks to get it back. So definitely the cons of the PowerTank, and one of its biggest drawbacks is it's big. Yes, it's big and kind of bulky. Depending on which one you get, you can go with a 10, 15, or 20 pound CO2 tank. I personally run the 20 pound CO2 tank, and it's about 26 inches tall. You got to figure out where to put it. So if you have a four-wheel camper like we do, there's not a lot of places that you can put it. Number two, it has to be standing straight up when you use it. If it's on its side, you have to have a specialty valve that goes inside of the tank itself. That's just one other thing that you have to consider. If you're gonna find a place to mount it, it's gonna be easier for you to mount it vertical, so you can just plug it into wherever it's at and then run your hose around the vehicle. The next thing that I don't really like about the PowerTank is that it's a freaking tank, and what if it freaking blows up and freaking kills me? We really try to do things redundantly. So when I put it away, I take the regulator off just in case that regulator was to get smacked and snap the whole system apart. At least we don't have a rocket flying around inside the truck. Now, I've heard a lot of people have different rules, and you can either go to a paintball store or you can go to a home brewing kind of store or a welding supply shop. And some of those places are able to fill that for you, but it really depends on your local area and what's available to you. And since we kind of live in the sticks, we didn't really have a lot to choose from. Some of the biggest things that we've learned from our PowerTank is that it's extremely reliable and it works extremely fast. So we can fill up our tire approximately 15 PSI per 60 seconds. 15 PSI for 60 seconds is a great bargain, especially since at that rate, we'll get 28 tire fills out of the entire tank itself. So that's, depending on how we use it or if we have any leakage within our hose lines, that's between 6 and 8 full sets of tires, which is absolutely appropriate in my mind for the price that it costs to fill a tank. Yeah, how about you tell me in the comments below if you use air tools out on the road in your overlanding vehicle, because we personally don't, and I'd really like to know if anybody else does, or if we've all transitioned into the battery power stuff because it's become so torque heavy. In our local area, to fill the tank, it costs about $40, which seems really reasonable to me when I think of the ease of use, the reliability, how fast it can go, the ability to run air tools if I need, and the complete versatility of the tank itself. What other options do you have for an air tank? Well, in the link below, I put the DIY kit down there. There's also a DIY kit by the same brand that I was able to purchase my parts through, and they actually offer a kit, and it's about $375. And that's including the bracket that you get to mount it, which is a screaming deal. When you compare it to the PowerTank brand itself with their B kit is about $714. Yikes. And to me, that means I can spend more money on adventures, and I mean, I feel like you would too. So let's talk about the next option. And the next option is really to hardwire a compressor under your hood or somewhere else on your vehicle. Now you might think, why do I want to hardwire something? Well, the best way to get more power into a system is to have it hardwired. If you're using a 12-volt socket, you're probably limited at 15 amps. Well, the ARB CKMA12, which is their single cylinder compressor, works best at around 40 amps. So having it directly connected to the battery with a relay is going to be your best option. We actually have our CKMA12 connected straight through our switch pros, which I'm able to toggle on and off even if the vehicle isn't on. The pros about the CKMA12, one of the biggest pros to having a smaller compressor is that it allows me to run my lockers also. So I can run my front and rear locker simultaneously and run air if I need it, but I wouldn't technically run lockers and air at the same time. But the point is, I can run my lockers and then I can run an airline off of that also. Now the airline doesn't fill the fastest. I think my operating pressure is somewhere between 80 and 100 PSI. And you know, it really takes about 2.5 minutes to 3.5 minutes to fill up our 15 PSI, whereas the PowerTank, we're looking at about 60 seconds. The next thing that I like about the ARB single compressor is that I can plug that in and I can have my buddy fill up his tires, and then I can walk around my truck with my PowerTank kit and I can fill up all mine also. I found that my ARB compressor is extremely reliable. I've never had a failure and I've never had an issue with it falling apart on me. I do have it mounted under the hood, and the under hood heat hasn't seemed to deteriorate it in a way to where it's failed or it's even leaking, and I haven't had any problems with it at all. I can run it with the flip of a switch. There's no filling a tank. It's super simple, and if I really wanted to, I could have my air compressor run to a storage tank, which then makes filling tires easier, and you can also run air tools if you have a storage tank for your air compressor. In our situation, the CKMA12 has worked really well because it's nice and compact and it was really easy to fit under the hood. The difficult part was finding a bracket for it, but once we found that, it was extremely easy to install under the hood, and having it hardwired in just offers that much more flexibility. The last pro about the ARB compressor is that they're completely rebuildable and they have a great warranty. So if it does fail on you, don't fret, get a hold of ARB. They'll either rebuild it or give you a new one, which in my opinion, it's really nice when a company stands behind their product. That's a big selling point for me personally. Oh, the next pro about the CKMA12, and I guess the Twin also, is that they're both under the total price of what a PowerTank official brand CO2 kit would cost you. So the CO2 kit can be as expensive as $714, where the ARB Twin kit can be as low as $650. And another positive about the ARB single air compressor is that the kit itself is about $375, and the air compressor with the wiring harness is about $299. So it's a huge savings altogether if you compare apples to apples. A few of the things that I don't really like about the CKMA12 is that, well, initially I didn't have a switch pro to install it with, so I installed it with a flip switch that it came with. My bad, because the switch pro is super amazing, lit like this. Woo, lit. But when I initially installed it, I had the flip switch. It still worked the exact same, but that's one thing that I regret, is that I should have really just installed it with the switch pro, because I knew I was going to need a switch pro later on anyway, and I should have just dove in and got it when I knew I was going to need it. One of the downsides to the smaller compressor is it heats up, and it has a 30-minute cycle time. ARB really recommends not running it longer than 30 minutes. So if you had a group of people and you're filling up your tires and your buddy's tires, well, that's probably all it's going to be able to handle until you jump up to the Twin. And then the Twin has enough output that it technically works twice as fast as the single. If you're airing up something that's over 37, you should definitely consider the twin because the output is going to be twice as fast and you're going to be able to air those things up a lot quicker. Plus its duty cycle is like 60 minutes, which is again twice the single cylinder. So there's a few things that we'd probably do different if we could do it all again. First off, the thing that I would do different is I would consider buying a smaller CO2 tank. The next thing I would probably do different, and it's kind of different in our situation because we use all the space that we have, is I would really like to find a place to permanently mount my CO2 tank. And I would like to mount it vertically so I could just leave it mounted there and then just plug in my air chuck to it when I do need it. Right now it's mounted to the floor and then I have to unstrap it, take it out, set it vertically, then I take it around all the tires with me just because it seems to be a little more simpler once I already have it out. But if I could just leave it where it was at, boy, that would make everything so much easier. So I'd recommend to you, if you have the room available to mount it vertically, I would just go ahead and mount it vertically. It's gonna make life one step easier in the long run. So now you're probably thinking, well, Austin, what do I really need? Do I need the compressor? Do I need the power tank? Or do I need the twin compressor? Well, that's going to be really up to what you need and the power output you need and the length of power output you need also. I personally like the idea of having a redundant system. So my recommendation is this. You can buy a power tank and you can buy a single ARB compressor for about $675 for the both of them. Then you can install your compressor and then you can have your power tank on tap and then you have a redundant system. Just in case something fails, you will have a backup. With the power tank system and with an ARB system, then in the future, if you decide to get lockers on your vehicle, now you can run your lockers with your ARB compressor, or your buddy can fill up his tires with your compressor while you fill up your tires with your power tank. Plus that $675 that we're talking about spending to get both systems is still cheaper than the power tank brand B system, which still comes in at $714. I won't say that PowerTank isn't a great quality brand, but I will say it's extremely expensive and I don't have that kind of money just to blow it on something like a power tank. And my final thoughts are this: a compressor is a great idea, and if that's all you can afford right now, that's probably the one you should get because there's really no maintenance to it. It's plug and compress, and once you're able to air up, then you can air down your tires when you go off-road and you're gonna have a much better experience. There's no real maintenance cost to it. There's no going to fill it up. When your budget does allow, I would recommend getting the power tank, start filling up your tires with that, and then you can leave your compressor for your lockers. I'm Austin with WolfPac-Outdoors. Howl at you later.